Hello and welcome to podcast 27 from Football-Oranje. I'm Michael Statham and I'm here with podcast regular James Rowe to discuss everything Dutch football. The big news: Ronald Koeman is confirmed as a new Netherlands national team manager, and PSV and Ajax are still fighting it out for the Eredivisie title. All that and more to come, including your questions that were sent in, are answered. We're available to listen and download on SoundCloud, iTunes and our YouTube channel. Enjoy. Okay, James, I'd like to start this podcast by talking about Ronald Koeman. It's a big news this week, and Football-Oranje, we put out a poll and we asked if fans are happy with Ronald Koeman's appointment as Netherlands head coach, and 68% replied with yes, with only 11% saying no and would have wanted someone else, 21% saying they were unsure at the moment. James, what do you think of the appointment, considering it's largely positive from the fans? Are they right to think so?
Yes, I believe so. It was also my choice. Listeners of previous pods will know that I championed him from the off. I thought his unveiling at the Dutch FA headquarters was very interesting, especially the questions that were put to him. And he's adamant that he's going to stay up until the end of his contract, to include the 2022 World Cup. He's happy to have the job, and I think he knows what his assignment is. It's to build a new team that can compete. The interesting points about this is that in 2003, when Ajax almost reached the semi-finals of the Champions League, he built that team when Feyenoord were in immense difficulty financially, and he decided to really blood through the youth. He oversaw that, and you saw the quality of players coming through, which are now gone on to be seasoned internationals and playing abroad, and also managing in Spain and in England. And I think it's a perfect job for him. I think it's a perfect time for him as well. And I just think that he must be allowed to get on with the job in hand. It'd be interesting that his debut will be at home in Amsterdam against England in March in a friendly. And considering the criticism he got at the end of his days in Everton, so I think slowly but surely it's a great appointment. 4 years too late in my opinion, but better late than never, eh?
Yeah, perfect appointment. It's a shame it's a bit too late, but maybe it comes at the right time. He will be able to take the young players that are coming through, and I think this time the generation does feel a lot more positive. It is a lot stronger. There's a lot more quality there as well. And it's just good that he's worked with a lot of these players before. He's worked with a lot of them in the Netherlands, and I think someone like David Klaassen, who he's championed and brought to Everton, hasn't gone right for him so far in the Premier League, but I feel like Koeman's the right man to really take him by the horns and really try and bring him back to the player he used to be. What other kind of qualities do you think Koeman's going to bring though?
I think tactically he will help a young group improve. He's already advocated that he wants the team to be able to adapt to different formations within games and be able to take initiative and be able to learn. And I think he'll be highly motivated, very an awful lot of experience too. And I think that the objective to build a team to be able to compete, I think that's something that he will be able to fulfil. I'm really interested to see how wide he casts his net, because having spoke to Hirving last October, this is a defender who's playing every week in a very, very strong league in Germany, and he's been overlooked by many different national team managers and ignored in some quarters. And I can see Koeman casting his net wide and looking at what's available in different countries as well. You have Jordi Klaassen at Club Brugge. You've got lots of different opportunities, and I'm just really interested to see how far he casts his net and how interesting his future squad selections will be.
Yeah, definitely. I really like that point. He is not blinded by the other leagues in Europe. He'll look far and wide at all those that are available, especially in Germany. I think that there isn't much tension there at the minute. Jeffrey Calvaleo, who you spoke to, James, I think he is a perfect example of that. If he can really step up his performances, he can be with them with a shout. What do you think Ronald's first steps could be in terms of reorganising the team and tactics. I just want to add a point on that before you answer, James. I did notice that in these interviews, he talked about the formations and that 4-3-3 is perhaps the key formation, but he's not afraid at all if he has to play 5 at the back for a more tricky game. And I think that's what I personally really like about him, is just a lot more adaptable and really just open to a load more ideas. But what do you think his first steps might be then, when he's taken over?
I think his first step will to be able to assess what he has. He has stated about 4-3-3 and being able to adapt. It was quite funny because in that press conference he was asked a lot of different questions. He was even asked if he would entertain the notion of Van Persie and other experienced players coming back into the fold, and he was basically saying that it's about quality. But I also think that he's being very polite and very respectful, that that Van Persie isn't necessarily the future of the Dutch national team, but he wouldn't begrudge him a farewell game to for everyone to say thanks for his services, for example. And I think that was the point that he was making. One very interesting point which was overlooked, especially in the foreign media, right at the end he was asked about the situation regarding in the past with Hakim Ziyech choosing Morocco over the Netherlands, and how Koeman would look to avoid that in future in terms of selecting players and making sure they would look to choose the Netherlands. And he said that it's about getting off the mark quick. It's about approaching players as early as possible and sounding them out if they're interested. And I just think he's going to survey very, very calmly and very, very slowly. Dwight Lodewijks has been announced as his assistant, who, when I spoke to Pelle van Aanholt at LA Galaxy in Los Angeles last September, he was absolutely so positive about Dwight Lodewijks as a manager and as because he was just saying about his positivity and the small details and being able to correct certain things and being able to give simple advice. And I think for a young group meeting up together, I think Dwight Lodewijks is a good choice. I think he'll be eager to help these young players, and I think that will strengthen Koeman's case further, really.
Yeah, the appointment as assistant manager did surprise me a little bit. He doesn't have a lot of experience manager-wise, but I remember his season at Hirving, if I remember correctly. He didn't get the best out of the whole squad, but out of the young players particularly, he really developed them very well, and they ended up getting really good careers within Europe. I'd like to open the first question from our Twitter followers this evening, and this fella here has got a name in Arabic, and I cannot read it, and it's not the first time he sent a question, and I would love to know how to say your name. Please could you comment or tweet us, because I would love to know how to say it. He has 2 questions. The first one is, which players will make their debut with Oranje?
That's a very tricky question, because you don't know how far and how wide Koeman is going to cast his net. But I think the gentleman has a great point that there will be debutants in the squad for the England game in March, and they may well be surprising, but at the moment I would not necessarily know what names to say, because that comes down to what Koeman is deliberately looking for and who he wants to cap, and should be very interesting indeed.
Well, we have a video on our YouTube channel with 5 players that we think could be up there to make their debut. I would say you could go for likes of Regisonio Haps, or an outside shout could be Hans Hartebur, Italy, if Koeman can search far enough that to other leagues he might not have looked at before.
Possibly, but I just don't know what he's thinking and what he's looking at, and it'd just be very, very interesting. I think to suggest names would be very speculative. Hence why I thought that although it's a very good question, I don't think if I was to say a name, I would just be saying it for the sake of it.
And another question is, which players do you think that Koeman will drop from Oranje? Which players will he move on? One that links to his interview, I would say, might be Wesley Sneijder and Robin van Persie. I really hope that he can move these guys on.
I agree. I can see them receiving farewell games as a way of saying thank you in the short term, but in the long term, not so much. I think he won't begrudge them an opportunity for all the fans to thank them for their services, and rightly so. They've given many years of service to the Dutch national team. But I think after that, I think he'll get down to business to form a team to be able to compete, and I just think it'll be very interesting.
Yeah, and another name that I just thought of right now could be Frankie de Jong at Ajax, of course. One of the true Eredivisie talents at the moment. Such a good quality player. And it opens up to some more questions that were sent in via Twitter. William says, what do you see as Frankie de Jong's long-term position? What will this be for both Ajax and Oranje? James, fire away.
I would say, considering his age and considering how well he started, I believe that I think he can be moulded into an attacking midfielder who comes from deep. I mean, his marauding runs from defence in some cases at some points this season, especially for someone so young, has been tremendous to see. But I think with his tenacity and his composure on the ball, I think he could well be cajoled into securing an attacking midfield position, and I think that would mean that you would be able to constantly see a very dangerous side of him. I was at the game today, Ajax against FC Twente, and he was a little bit quiet today. He wasn't the flashes of normal brilliance that we saw and the marauding runs, but you can't have every game at such a wonderfully high level. But I would say attacking midfielder.
Yeah, he's terrific. I personally think he could sit a bit deeper and he'd be better as a defensive midfielder. I think the rough and tumble of playing at centre-back has worked for him in his favour. It will work for him in the long term. He will be able to focus on a midfield position, I would think, from next season. I can't see Ajax going into next season seeing De Jong and De Ligt as the centre-back partnership to continue. De Jong is far too lightweight, and in Europe he will be found out. I think the perfect example, though, of how he's adapting to that situation is when Ajax got a 0-0 draw away at Utrecht. They didn't win, but they had the clean sheet, and De Jong had a fantastic pass succession, again, the best on the pitch, again, in the high 90s. And he dealt with Johanno Kirk really well. Really pacey striker, really determined striker. He likes the rough and tumble on attack. Through balls, running onto them. De Jong dealt with him, shouldered him off the ball, shepherded things away. It was great to see how quickly he can adapt to that new position. He's been training in it for probably like a month, 2 months. And he looks a natural already. But I do hope that midfield is his long-term position, especially for the Netherlands. They really need a player who can make them tick and spray loads of balls from all sorts of angles to try and quicken the play up a little bit and just bring that danger back to the Netherlands.
Yeah, I agree. I think in a defensive sense for Ajax next season with Per Schuurs and Matthijs de Ligt, I think it's important for them to forge a partnership and be able to play together. I think the rumours of Matthijs de Ligt to Barcelona, I think they're completely unfounded. I think Matthijs de Ligt himself is looking forward to playing with Per Schuurs and building a partnership together to go forward. And it's a fantastic base for the centre backs of Ajax to build upon. And if you put Frankie de Jong in front of them, marauding forward, then that could be a very dangerous trio to build out from the back and to develop counter attacks for Ajax in the future.
Right. Daniel asks, is Frankie for real? The answer is yes. And yes. The next question is, Cam says, what are your thoughts on Erik ten Hag so far? James, you watched Ajax beat Twente 2-1 today, as you said. What did you make of that?
Yeah, I thought that it wasn't the most convincing performance, but they did ever so well to get such a quick goal by Justin Kluivert. And when FC Twente were coming with more and more motivation to break with counter attacks and to edge a little bit forward, Ajax managed to keep them in check. But then FC Twente had a spell where they were pushing. And the equaliser came, and but also to go straight down the other end almost and win a penalty. And it was a fantastically placed penalty by Lozano today. It was I was up the other end, but I managed to have a good view, and it was a fantastic penalty. And I also saw him against NAC Breda last Sunday, and he's slowly but surely building a base as well as picking up points and quietly going about his business. And I think it's very promising. I can see Ajax being able to catch PSV, not over the course of 2 or 3 weeks, but I think over a spell where, if you look at PSV's next 2 fixtures against Hirving and Feyenoord, I expect them to drop points in both games. I think Hirving, they had a good spell, but have suffered two strange results midweek when they lost to Zwolle, and not being able to beat Lodz at home. But before that, they were on a winning run again with I think it was 7 points from 9. And I rate Jürgen Sleppel, their manager, and they're just a little bit inconsistent. And I can see them causing a surprise in Eindhoven next Saturday.
I personally don't think Ten Hag has set the world alight so far. I really rated him before he came to Amsterdam. Of course, he's only had a few games to really put an impact in. They were terrific against Feyenoord, played them off the park. But against NAC Breda and Twente against today, I'm not saying they have to win every game 4-0. But when I watched the second half against NAC Breda, it was, I could have fallen asleep. Nothing really happened, nothing of note. I just wonder whether it's terrific, great game management from Ten Hag, because the opposition hardly have many chances, or whether it's actually the players aren't motivated to get some more goals.
I think it's him being aware that they can still catch PSV, and that they have to keep the duty of picking up maximum points on a regular basis. In the winter break, it was very interesting to hear Matthijs de Ligt say about the tactical training they do and the tactical sessions they have in learning about different scenarios and different drills and that kind of thing. And I think Ten Hag hasn't been there very long, and but he's finding a balance of picking up maximum points. And I think that the more elaborative and decorative play, I think that will come as time goes on. I think we'll see that at the start of towards the end of this season. We'll see that more regularly, and especially next season as well.
I've got another tasty question for you here, James. You ready for this one?
Yes, far away.
4 years from now, who would you rather have? Ajax's David Neres or PSV's Hirving Lozano?
David Neres is who I would rather have. He was subbed off today, Neres, and he had flashes in the first half where he did very well, and he had a fantastic game against Breda last Sunday, and he's just a very, very, very good footballer. And Lozano is also very good, but Lozano is a bit more of a penalty box killer, where everything in and around the box, but inside the box, is willing to finish it. But David Neres reminds me of Richarlison at Watford, who himself came very, very close to signing for Ajax, and then Watford came in under the noses of Ajax to prize Richarlison and have him play in the Premier League. But if I had to make a choice, I would choose David Neres instead of Hirving Lozano.
Excellent points on both of them there, James. And I would like to add to that and actually go against what you say. And I think Hirving Lozano will be the better player, especially on an international front. I think he's going to be terrific. I think he's going to be significant for Mexico, like Andres Guardado. But I think the difference between Neres and Lozano is it feels like a Messi against Ronaldo battle already. Because Neres is, like Messi, very skillful, has loads of technique, beats opponents, sets players up. Lozano for me is more of a Ronaldo, and as you say, more of a goal getter. He's in the box a lot more. more of a finisher. But the difference between the two actually that could perhaps sway me towards Neres is Lozano does fall away in some games and does go missing a little bit, but I think that can improve with the more experience he gets. But for me, I go with Lozano. More goals to his game.
Interesting. One interesting point for the listeners as well, that there are rumblings here in the Netherlands that Neres is being looked at by the current Brazilian national team coach Tite to be included in the Brazilian national team squad for the World Cup in the summer. And although the World Cup is quite some months away, looking as a football fan, I think if you look at what Tite has done with Brazil and looking at the pool of talent he has at his disposal in all leagues, I think that's very impressive indeed. I think it's very impressive that a young Brazilian playing in the Netherlands and gaining more and more responsibility for his team may well be in line for a national team call up to a squad to participate in a World Cup. I think that gives hope and incentive to many, many young footballers playing abroad.
And I hope that the Eredivisie does have loads of representatives at the World Cup because of the Netherlands not making it. And David Neres and Hirving Lozano could be two really significant players in the competition. Two of many, actually. I think that there's also players like Adi Reza, Johan Baksha, AZ, who could really make an impact. And I'm really excited to see what will happen.
I think it's going to be a great World Cup. I think it's going to be a World Cup absolute full of surprises, and I think it's going to be many, many stories to tell.
Now, Lozano brings me on to a question that I was thinking about, James, for the podcast, and PSV are leading the Eredivisie by 7 points at the moment. Do you think they're going to crumble? They have had some very close results. 3 points is 3 points, but when they're scraping a winner away at Sparta Rotterdam, who are bottom of the table, do you start to worry that their lead is going to slowly and surely disintegrate with 11 games to go?
Yeah, I think it will, but I can't see that happening in consecutive games. I think the pressure will creep onto them. I think the pressure on Koku that he's put on himself is enormous. I mean, even in the early interviews he was giving to the local media back in August and September, with only maybe 6 games played, not even that, he's talking about the necessity of winning a league title and how important it is. And so I think there's big pressure there. I think considering the games they've got coming up, Hirving, Feyenoord, Utrecht, Ajax, and a couple of other games as well. I think they're also away to AZ Alkmaar as well. These types of games, I'm not entirely sure if they're going to pick up 3 points, and should be very interesting right until the end.
And I think that there are signs in their play away from home. At home, they are so strong. They have won 21 games in the spin now at home in the league, but they lost away at Feyenoord in the cup quarter final, totally outplayed. They lost away at Ajax before the winter break, totally outplayed. And they've scraped wins away at Sparta, away at Heracles, away at Twente. This is all very recently as well. It's all going to go wrong, in my opinion, and I'm surprised it hasn't happened already. Feyenoord coming up, AZ coming up away from home, Ajax at home. I think it's going to happen very soon.
Well, I think it'll be very interesting to the end. I think that they won't necessarily drop the points in consecutive games, but I think over a period of maybe 6 to 8 weeks, you'll see a dip in form and a drop in the gap of the points and in the points gap. And I believe that the game in Eindhoven, I think it's 15th of April off the top of my head, I think that could very well be key.
Yes, it's 15th of April, and there's just been a lot of criticism towards PSV, and if you're leading a table by 7 points, it says possibly two things. Either we're all wrong and us criticise them for playing very average football, is that all wrong? Or is it because the strength of the league? Are Ajax, AZ, Feyenoord, the teams below them, are they just not strong enough? Is it a sign of the times? Because if you compare this PSV side to the PSV side that won the league under Koku previously, where they had the likes of Memphis, Wijnaldum, and so on, is that a much stronger team than we see today with PSV? They still have the likes of Lozano, Van Hinkel, Zut in goal, but is this the same kind of quality team?
I think with the reigning champions falling away so early, that hasn't helped the image of the league. But I think if you look at the league overall, for VVV Venlo to be sitting with 30 points after 23 games is tremendous. For Excelsior on such a budget, to have 26 points, for Twente to be in the precarious position they're in, for such a well-respected manager in Advocaat to return to home shores to want to manage. The Eredivisie has always been an acquired taste, and there's always something about it. And there's lots of youthful players that can go on to better things. I think the manager opportunities at top level is something which is undervalued. There's of the 18 teams in the Eredivisie, there's 17 Dutch managers, and there's one from Belgium, which is NAC Breda manager Stijn Vreven. So if you think of these 17 Dutch managers getting experience at the highest level, which will stand them in good stead in the future.
Yes, there are loads of positives, and this is the reason why we both love the Eredivisie. But you make a good point there, that teams like VVV Venlo, Excelsior, on shoestring budgets with very small crowds coming to visit them every week, does that show that you can get away with a low budget in the highest level in the Netherlands? Because if you compare these to English teams, a team like Excelsior's got a budget possibly similar to a League Two team in England.
Possibly.
Arguably that is the case. The way that it's spent though here in the Netherlands means that they're not at the same quality level as a League Two team, but it's an interesting point, isn't it, that teams such as VVV can be in the top half of the Eredivisie table with very little money. Is that a sign of the times?
Well, in the case of VVV, when they won the league last year, they had the 10th biggest budget, and I had the pleasure of interviewing Maurice Stijn last August, and one of the things that stuck with me is him telling me when he first arrived at the club, there was characters in the club that he didn't really like, and that he didn't really see them being an asset to the club and an asset to the team, and he had to kind of weed them out of the club to really, really create a togetherness. And if you think from top to bottom, if you think of the board level at Venlo, Stijn commuting from his home in The Hague to Venlo every day of the week, with as well as his general commitments, there's been an awful lot of sacrifices made, and he's just very, very happy there. And I'm really, really intrigued to see how far he can take VVV Venlo. And then the question comes in the summer, if he pushes it so far for linking him to Ipswich, for example. I mean, he told me himself that his career finished at the age of 27, and he had never had the opportunity to play abroad, and he only played for 2 Eredivisie clubs, and he has in the past rejected offers to manage not just other clubs here in the Netherlands but also abroad. I just think with such a stellar season in the offering for VVV Venlo, be interesting to see what comes his way in the summer, and more in particular what he actually decides to do. I'll be keeping a very, very close eye on that.
That leads very nicely onto our final question of the evening from Gareth. With a number of managers leaving their post this summer in the Eredivisie, are we likely to see a manager merry-go-round? I personally hope that Henk Fraser is going to get a chance at a big club, i.e. PSV, should Koku leave. James, are we going to see a manager merry-go-round?
I think we will, but I don't know if it's going to be a huge one. You've got Ernest Faber leaving Groningen, you've got Owen van der Looy leaving Willem II, you've got Henk Fraser leaving Vitesse. It'll be interesting to see who fits where. If you look back into recent history, the Eredivisie has always looked at the current pool they have, and clubs have always had the opportunity to take jobs when they're in the lower regions at other clubs that are in a higher position. To give you an example on that, current Heerenveen manager Jurgen Streppel, he was in charge of Willem II. and he was in a position where Willem II were playing some fantastic football, really, really good football, really, really solid. And he received an opportunity to go and manage Hirving, and yes, they've been a little bit inconsistent, but that was a step up for him. Also, as well with Groenendijk he was at Excelsior not so long ago, and gave the impression that he was kind of getting a little bit tired of fighting relegation all the time, and then now he's got his Ajax Den Haag club only 5 points from the European playoffs, and it's been a long time since Ajax Den Haag was involved in a potential European playoff scrap. So it should be very interesting to see who goes where in the summer.
Fantastic. Well, James, thank you for this evening. Now, before we do leave until our next podcast, we would just like to let you know about both of our latest interviews that are coming up within this coming weeks. Tomorrow, I'm off to meet Brentford's Florian Josefsson, and the interview will be up on Tuesday. And James?
Yeah, I've a very, very busy week, but I'll pick up the highlights. On Wednesday, I go to Nijmegen to interview Feyenoord loanee Jari Schuurman. And on Thursday, I speak to Swansea City centre-back Mike van der Horn. This very, very interesting week ahead. I'm very, very pleased with current interviews from the previous months, and also speaking this week to Anouk Dekker, who was part of the team that won Euro 2017 on home soil last summer. So very, very busy, but hoping for many, many questions and many, many answers with lots of depth to give the readers a genuine idea of the players and managers involved.
Brilliant. We'll keep an eye on our website for plenty of all this and much more. James, thank you.